the reach of justice. Let me be clear. Derek Chauvin does not represent all police officers, but he does represent the racists and racism that is prevalent within our law enforcement and judicial institutions. His actions were taken with his full expectation that regardless of the millions who witnessed this moment live, that he would not be held accountable for his crime against George Floyd. It is under this expectation and tradition of racist law enforcement that countless, literally countless, Black people in America have been murdered without accountability. This conviction does not make up for those lives, but rather it's a single small step toward equality under the law. 330 days later, we find ourselves mourning again with George Floyd's family, with hope that the arc of the moral universe truly bends towards justice. Not only do I get to believe that as a Black man, and one of only 2 out of 100 legislators in the state legislature, myself and Representative Exon, not only do we get to believe that the justice system can be for us, but when I go home this evening, after having had the talk with my son about law enforcement, he can have hope different than I have ever had in my life, that in his lifetime, he can believe that there is justice for him as well as a Black man.
Senator Fields.
Thank you, Madam President, and Representative Coleman, for your smart remarks, timely remarks. I just have some few comments, and my comments are simple. And it's based on the last words that we heard from George Floyd. He was so polite, George Floyd. And he says, "I can't breathe." Those was his last words. I can't breathe. And since the jury has been out deliberating, I can tell you that I've been very, very anxious, and I couldn't breathe. The reason I couldn't breathe is because I've seen this scenario play out time and time again, and the outcome has never been a just verdict. I'm still having difficulty breathing, even though I have the verdict. Because we still need to see what the judge is going to say as it relates to the sentencing. But when you have a law enforcement and you have somebody pleading for their life, that they can't breathe, and you have this guy, hands in his pocket, sunglasses on his head, and kept kneeling down on Mr. Floyd for over 9 minutes. It's hard for me to breathe right now because justice for that family, I don't know, that family can't be made whole. A brother is gone. A father is gone. Someone that was contributing to that family is gone. You can't remedy that. So even though this might, I still can't breathe. It might, I'm glad for the verdict, but I'm still having difficulty breathing. We don't have justice for Breonna Taylor.
Mm-hmm.
There's many victims that we don't have justice for. So we have to continue to do the work, as you mentioned, and we are going to be doing the work here under the state capitol so that we can get to the point that we can breathe.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Senator. Representative Bacon.
First, I'd like to say to the Floyd family and to the Minneapolis community, we're so sorry for your loss. I'd like to follow by saying thank you. I often say that Black people represent the soul of this nation. And how we are treated is a demonstration of what we will or will not tolerate in the treatment of humanity. And today, we saw an opportunity for not only this nation, but people across the world to be able to believe in humanity again. We have been saying names since before Emmett Till. And today, they were heard. I'm crying for your children, James. That we now have the opportunity to not be afraid. Mm-hmm. My mother was a child of Jim Crow. And I remind people that it was only one generation ago where we had laws lifted, but up until this day, we have not been validated in who we are in a country that is ours, that runs through our veins.
That's right.
We have a lot of work to do. I cannot be more prouder to sit here with the people you see before you, because they have demonstrated time and time again their understanding of the problems we face, and they have provided unrelenting will, force, and hope to change and dismantle the systems that have been built to keep us in our place.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The commitment you see from the people sitting here, are to continue to do that work. And we call on everyone who believes in how humanity is supposed to be treated to partner with us. Again, I just want to reiterate how important it is to know that you can be safe in your own country, and that people, whether they are neighbors or a jury of peers or elected officials, will work tirelessly to get us to that place that Dr. King said fulfills the promises to what we wrote on paper.
Amen.
So again, I want to end with a thank you. And while we may have a sigh, the work is not done.
Nope.
But this is a day that I hope we remember not only again here, but across the state, nation, and world, that we can truly fulfill the best of us. So thank you.
Representative Judah. No.
Thank you, Senator. Friends, I just want to reiterate what my colleagues have said here today. We have a very, very long way to go. Today was but a small sigh of relief. But I want to challenge that and say, should we even be taking a sigh of relief? Are we actually living in a society that we need to hold our breath for justice? I want to ask, is that in fact even justice? We do have a very long way to go. For the countless lives that have been murdered, a sea change is happening. And we are forcing the hand of this country to redefine equity, justice, and civil rights. So we have to ask ourselves, what do we need, not want, what do we need those answers to those questions to be? We need to answer those questions and redefine our reality so that Tony Exum Jr. and that James Coleman Jr. aren't having to face those questions when they're older. And that rests on our shoulders for this generation.
We'll now take any questions. Marianne. I'll say that Senator Coleman, Senator Fields, and I were together when the verdict came in, and I think we're still shell-shocked, to be honest with you. We looked at each other about 12 times, wanted to hear again the verdict. Did you hear the same thing? Because it was unbelievable that someone was finally prosecuted for murdering someone in our community. You know, my brother is 6'3", 300 pounds, anesthesiologist, did all the right things in life, still gets pulled over for driving a nice car in a nice neighborhood far too often, never been ticketed. Still fearful that if he did the wrong thing or made the wrong motion, that he'll be killed. He is in the Navy, he serves his country. He is not a threat. James Coleman is not a threat. Tony Exum is not a threat. And until you see us as people, as human beings who deserve to live, and little James as a young black boy who deserves to grow up, we won't have justice in this country and the work will not be done. So how do we feel? We felt the weight of our ancestors. We felt a collective sigh of relief, and we felt a moment of solidarity in the work. Other questions? Yes. Colorado, again, made historic efforts in being the first state to end qualified immunity for law enforcement officers, to change our use of force standard, to require officers step in and do something when they see another officer put the knee on someone's neck. We made huge efforts in reform last year, and it was together and led by the Democratic caucus. And I look to the folks, my colleagues, I know not everyone's here, but some of the legislators that are here, I see you guys, who stood up and said, we support the Black Caucus's efforts in moving forward, and we are unmovable. And we trust that the work that you do is what needs to happen for the community. Thank you for that. But no one bill is going to change the outcome for our entire community or change an entire profession that has been built upon shielding each other and unfortunately harboring some of those who are racist in that profession. My dad is law enforcement, retired of 30 years. He's the best man I know. And it's important that we lift up folks like him in this work, but that we also are able to not shield the ones like Derek Chauvin, right? So we are moving bills forward this year that continue to the work of law enforcement reform. That includes the work of 1250 that I'm running with my colleague here, Senator Fields. 1251 that looks at the use of ketamine that murdered Elijah McClain. We're looking at whistleblower protections for law enforcement officers so they can step forward and step up and against these atrocities that are happening in our communities. And there is so much more that is happening in our communities. The reason why there needs to be a Senate Bill 62 is because we are harassed, we are targeted, we are seen as threats, and we are met with force even for the smallest suspicion. And that has to change. I commend the efforts of my colleague on the Senate Judiciary Committee for looking to make some of those changes. I know it's hard. But we stand here before you together because we will not be intimidated by threats. We will not be stopped in this work. We will continue because we must. These incidences should never happen again. What we saw in the video of George Floyd was the most egregious, but it wasn't the only type of action. It's happening in our communities every day, and it's got to change. So we will continue the work. I encourage all of my colleagues, all of Coloradans to step up and to work with us on these efforts. Every voice matters. Every level of government must take on this challenge. No more lives need to be lost.
Thank you.
Anything else good? Thank you for your time.